Hello and welcome to another video in the series from Pembrokeshire Beekeepers Association's Lockdown Learning, the basic beekeeping course that we're doing via video because of course with the virus we can no longer run the fortnightly sessions. So this video is about hives. We'll do frames and foundation separately, but of course now that you've got all the kit you're going to want a hive. There's various hives about. The twee ones that you see in gardens with a little shaped roof and little flat ones, that's a WBC, named after William Broughton Carr. Very good if you've got one or two. If you've got any more than that, then they take a lot longer to inspect. There's a range of hives, but the most popular one in the UK is the National Hive, and here it is. So we'll run through what it is. First of all, a floor, a mesh floor. Try not to have one with a solid floor, they do tend to overheat. And on that you've got an entrance block, which is hopefully self-explanatory. That's the floor. On top of the floor goes your brood box, and the clue is in the title. This is where the queen lives exclusively in a brood box filled with frames and foundation, and this is where she lays the eggs, because what you don't want is to have her laying throughout your honey supers and polluting those with eggs and larvae and such like. In order to keep her there, so at the start of the season really you'll end up with a brood box, bees, queen, etc. It'll build up, and then you'd have on top of that a crown board. This one has a shape, an old shape for a porter bee escape, and that would go, and the roof would go on that. But because you're going to be a really good beekeeper, of course, that's going to build up. So in order to do that, you need to keep her down there. This is a queen excluder, fits on there like that, and it does what it says on the tin. It stops the queen from coming up into the honey supers. The worker bees can, but she can't because she's a little bit bigger. Just on the point of queen excluders, sometimes you'll get a kit with something like this, a plastic one, or God help us, even a metal galvanized ones. There's only one thing to do with these, and that's to throw them away, because they're pretty hopeless. They sit flat. This has got an edge around it so that when you put it on there, there's still room for the bees and you don't squish them when you put it on. Anything like those flat ones, frankly, I don't rate. Buy these, much better investment. So having got your queen excluder on there, kept her down below, and of course you'd have marked her, you'll then have a number, we hope, of honey supers there that go on there. You'll sometimes, if you've got a big, very, very busy colony, you'll take the queen excluder out and put it up here, and that's called a brood and a half, but we'll cover that another time. So for the purposes of this, floor, brood box, queen excluder, supers. And you can see in the supers that these are Hoffman frames, which means that they are already shaped, so they have a separation that allows the bees to travel back to back around them, but doesn't give them sufficient room to make a flipping mess. If you don't have Hoffman frames, you can just use these plastic spacers to give you the appropriate distance apart. You can also buy these, which tack on into the side of these castellations. They come in 9, 10s and 11s generally. If you're going to start off with 11, because if you put 9s in here to start, they'll make a mess because they'll get a lot of room to build up comb. So I normally start with 11s. They're cheap and cheerful and really quite helpful when you put them on. Just be careful that they're level, of course. So that's your super, honey supers, hopefully a number of them through the course of the season. And then on the top of that, the aforementioned crown board, usually with a piece of slate or glass over that to keep them in. And of course, a weatherproof roof. And that is your basic National Hive, made in cedar. You can buy them made in pine. I am told that pine, unlike cedar, sweats, and while they're all right for supers, apparently they're not very keen for some of them on brood boxes. That's all I've been told. I have no personal experience of that. Another thing just to remember, cedar, the dust of which is carcinogenic. So if you are doing any DIY with cedar, do wear a decent mask. So that's your average national hive made of cedar, the most common hive in the UK today. Variations on this are the poly hive, and there's a number of makes of these on the market. Very similar, but as you can see, much thicker in terms of insulation. I have to admit I like these, personal choice. They're cheaper, they're lighter, and they give better insulation, and you do tend to find a better build-up of the bees in the spring. Of course, the drawback is they're not natural wood, they're an oil-based product. Make your mind up. But they are actually quite good. In the bottom of it, you have a Varroa board. You can put these in stock drafts. I leave them out almost all the year. If you want to check for the drop of Varroa, we'll cover that again. Put something sticky on here, slide it in under there, give it a few days, count how many Varroa you've got. So those are basically the national hives. One other hive that's worthy of mention is the poly nuke. You can buy these in wood, but again they're cheap and light, and they're very good for all sorts of things. I overwinter colonies in nukes like this sometimes. They're very good for housing swarms. They're extremely good if you need to split a hive following an artificial swarm. And they're made up of a roof, again, very well insulated, a feeder, which of course is optional. You can just have it like that. But these feeders are quite useful, not least because you can go along and top it up by taking the roof off, and the bees can't get at you because it has a glass panel. So you fill these two bits up with syrup, the bees come up this centre bit down here, and I've left it, seriously, I've left this here on purpose because it does show that unless you're paying attention and they get a bit busy, they will start filling this with comb and honey, etc. But these are pretty cheap. They have a good entrance here at the bottom, so you've got just a clear entrance, you've got queen excluder, you've got closed altogether, and then you've got something for transport, for instance. And talking of transport, if you're going to catch a swarm or move bees in one of these, they do get hot very quickly, especially in the summer, especially for swarms. So you can buy just a ventilated roof so that they don't overheat. They do have a ventilated bottom. So those are basically the hives that you might want to consider as you begin your beekeeping journey.